Today we're going to solve quadratic equations by square rooting. So now that you know how to simplify, multiply, and divide radicals, let's use that knowledge to solve a quadratic equation. So let's take a simple quadratic equation, x squared equals 25. Well, if I square root both sides, I know the square root of x squared is just x, and I know the square root of 25 is 5. But is that the only solution that will make x squared equals 25 a true statement? No, because x could also equal negative 5, because negative 5 squared, or negative 5 times negative 5, is also 25. So when you are solving by square rooting, you must remember to put a plus or minus into your answer, because your answer could be plus 5 or your answer could be minus 5. So let's take a look at the steps that you need to go through in order to solve a quadratic equation by square rooting. So first thing you have to do is isolate the squared term. The term that has the square on it, you want to get it alone. Then you're going to take the square root of both sides, not forgetting your plus or minus, and then you will simplify your answer. So let's try a few. All right, here you have 2x squared equals 24. You have to isolate the squared term. So I have a 2 in front of the squared term, so I'm going to divide that out. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. It'll cancel out on the left side, and I'll end up with x squared equals 12. Now the squared term is alone, so I can square root both sides, not forgetting my plus or minus, and I'll get x equals plus or minus the square root of 12. My next step is to simplify. Well, I know the square root of 12 can be broken down into the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. But I know that the square root of 4 is 2, so the square root of 12 is 2 square root of 3. So my final answer is x equals plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3. Let's try this one. Once again, your first step is to isolate the squared term. Well, now I have this plus 6. I need to move that over to the right side of the equation. So I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides, and I'll have 5x squared equals 40. I still have not isolated that squared term yet. I need to divide both sides by 5. It'll cancel out on this side, and I'll have x squared equals 8. Now that I've isolated that squared term, I can square root both sides of the equation, not forgetting my plus or minus. Now I need to simplify. The square root of 8, it can be broken down into the square root of 4 times the square root of 2, but the square root of 4 is 2. So my final answer is x equals plus or minus 2 times the square root of 2. Here's a little bit of a trickier example now. I have x minus 3, the whole quantity squared, equals 56. Well, in this case, the isolated term, the term I want to isolate, is that whole x minus 3, because that is the whole thing that is being squared, and in this case it is already isolated. So all I have to do now is just square root both sides. Well, if you remember, when you square something and then square root it, it's kind of like doing it and undoing it. So when I do that, I'm simply going to get x minus 3 on the left side, and then plus or minus the square root of 56 on the right side. I now need to simplify. I haven't gotten x alone yet, so I have to add 3 to both sides. When I do that, I'll get x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 56, which is great, except that the square root of 56 is not simplified yet. It can be broken down into the square root of 4 times the square root of 14, because 14 times 4 is 56. So I know it'll simplify down to 2 times the square root of 14. So my final answer is x equals 3 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 14. And here's yet one more example. I need to isolate the squared term. Well, now I have a lot going on. So first thing I want to do is I need to add 3 to both sides. Now that I did that, I still have a 2 in front of my term that's squared, so I'm going to divide by 2. I get x plus 4 squared equals 16. Now my term that is squared is alone, and I can square root both sides. I have x plus 4 equals plus or minus 4, because the square root of 16 is 4. And now I'm going to simplify by subtracting 4 on both sides. Now my answer is x equals minus 4 plus or minus 4. But I can evaluate that because I have minus 4 plus 4, or I have minus 4 minus 4. Well, minus 4 plus 4 is simply 0, and minus 4 minus 4 is negative 8. So my final answer is x equals 0 or x equals negative 8. If you have any questions, let us know.